Hey, thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Gnostic Studies, and we'd like to continue our Gnostic Runology series with the third rune, the Dorn Rune. Thorn, Dorn, Torn, Thor, Thors, Thurs. But before we get into today's material, we always want to do a review of the previous class, in this case the Rune. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comments area. So the Rune is like the primordial womb, the source. According to Fischbach, means universal, absolute, eternal, and even the heavens. And in German, primordial, primal, primeval, ancient, initial, placed at the beginning, first, original. He says that it was related with the horns, kind of a U shape or a C shape, of the aurochs, which were a type of cattle that they used to have in the world, but that are apparently extinct now. And he said that there was 5 elements in the East: fire, earth, water, wood, and metal, and that they corresponded to these shapes which he gave. And he said that the names for each one of the shapes, when you put them all together, are the word for a pentagram. I don't know. In East Asia. I don't know. That's what he says. And then he says, just kind of a interesting little note, one forms a correct pentagram if one takes the right hand from the heart to the forehead, from there to the right breast, then over to the left and right shoulders, and back to the heart. And this graphic sort of talks about what he's saying. It's, instead of like crossing yourself, as is sometimes done in religious groups, this is a pentagrammatic way to do that. That he mentioned related with this rune, but he doesn't exactly say why. Although in Gnosis we could say that since is going to be related with the Divine Feminine, it could be related with the 5 aspects of the Divine Mother. He says the Rune thus expresses the element that embraces the earth, namely heaven, the primordial light or light, and the primordial eternity or eternity. He says in the Edda, the Himdall, the god of the primordial light or light, is enthroned at the top of the world tree. Where he, as a guardian or watchman, announces the dangers that threaten the gods with a horn. In the past, they did not know how to explain the position of Heimdall, he who was the brightest of the Aesir, and has 9 mothers who are also sisters, atop the world tree, because the study of fire worship was missing. And so now he tries to give his explanation. He says, since Heimdall personifies the primordial light, or light, which is formed from all flames, then if 9 different sacred woods burn on the altar at the same time, then his mothers are 9 different trees, who are at the same time sisters. Now, of course, if we use Gnostic alchemical or Kabbalistic interpretation, we know that this would be related to Arcanum 9. After Fischbach, we studied Guido von List in 1907. He gave a little poem that goes with this rune. He says, I learned another rune which people use who wish to become doctors. The source of all phenomena is the Ur. Whosoever is able to recognize the Ur cause of an event, the original cause or primordial cause, for them the incident in itself, be it hostile or happy, is not an unsolvable riddle. This is because they are able to find means in order to banish hostility or to increase happiness. Likewise, they are also able to recognize pseudo-evil and pseudo-happiness as such. And then he gives a little motto. He says, "Know thyself, then thou wilt know all." Kind of a short little explanation there. About 20 years, 15, 20 years later, Ernst Tristan Kurtzahn says that exoterically it means life and death. Esoterically, immortality, Ur-light, Ur-eternity. And generally, Ur-bull or Ur-procreation, to come back to life. This rune teaches the source, the Ur cause of all earthly and cosmic phenomenon. If one looks at the rune, then one finds it is quite similar to an inverted Latin U. However, the rune points with one tip upwards, and thereby indicates that all occurrences are rooted in the eternal source, the Ur Grund or Ur reason. The source is often represented by a circle with a point in the middle. Let us remember that this comprehensive symbol, which was chosen with good reason, is the astronomical sign for the sun. Now let us consider that according to the drawing of the runic hexagon, the left vertical beam of the Ur goes through the middle point of the circle representing God as the source. This contact of the God symbolizing middle point is characteristically found in all runes without exception, as God is also revealed in all. If one now has recognized the source in everything, then one is also aware of the deception of substance, of matter, of the material world, which the Indians very correctly called the veil of Maya deception. What is matter or the material world but a deception? Every substance, if it is composed of something, consists of molecules. These in turn of atoms, and these of electrons, which in their turn are composed of positive and negative ions. Now this implies that matter in itself is actually those ions, and they turn out to be, he says, etheric vortices or vortexes, or electrical force fields swinging unimaginably fast according to certain laws. Thus the whirling Ur force, the primordial force, pretends to be bodies for the sense perception, but they are not present in truth, and their weight can be sufficiently explained by their mutual electromagnetic voltage ratios in relation to the planet Earth. Therefore, it is clear that whosoever has recognized the law of vibrations and has mastered it can use this knowledge to heal, to be a doctor. Healing magnetism, including its development through odic radiation, rooted in the Ur light, is certainly what is referenced in the rune song. Likewise with medication, what is it that actually heals? Primarily the respective vibrations and radiations particular to the medicine, in a similar way as the hand of the magnetizer, who already has their great predecessor in Jesus Christ. He's talking about healing by laying of hands. All right, so that was 1924. In 1930, we have Gorsleben. He quotes Dr. Friedrich Teltscher's Ur word for this rune, which he says means that which is grasped as well as acquired, captures, detected, sensed. And he gives a little bit longer poem. Another I call that is needy to all, who act as healing doctors. Know thyself, and thou shalt know the world and learn to separate evil from cause. In the Nordic secret doctrine, the Rune means immortality, original light, eternity. Urda, which is a name of one of the Norns, is the mother, the cause. Thus, this rune nurtures the source, the cause of all things earthly and cosmic. And then he starts to synthesize some of the other ideas we already heard. He says, whosoever has recognized the source of all things has freed themselves from the deception or illusion of substance through the absolution of matter. The mind understands substance, in other words, it conceives of that which is divisible, and everything material or matter is divisible. Therefore, everything is ultimately light, and the root of all healing force is found in the light through odic radiation, the energy of Od. What heals in medications is the radiation force of their root essences. The ancients represented the unrevealed divinity as a circle. A point in the middle of the circle means the will to action, which is the source of God. It is no coincidence that the left vertical line of the Rune passes through this source of the circle, which encloses the hexagon, the physical world, and in whose center the 6 beams of the Rune are intersecting. There, in that central point, the unrevealed God rests. And then here he gives how to do the rune with the hand. He says, if the rune is depicted correctly, then, according to experience, the fingertips of the left and right middle fingers come into strong involvement, which triggers a feeling of radiating into the endless infinite through the arms. Or actually, he's talking about doing the body posture, which is this one. And that we feel a trickling feeling gently sliding down from right to left. And a physical feeling of heaviness subsides for a infinite vastness, spaceless feeling. He says, south is right, north is left, the middle of the heart is east, the back is west. Left above the head is the zenith, and on the right below the thigh is the nadar. Tune into these directions and think about the flow of time. So he's sort of giving more information about how to do the rune. He says, the fire surrounds us with its world warmth radiations from the circling stars. So we can receive certain radiations from the stars, which is why probably Krumheller says we should do the zodiacal exercises in order to familiarize ourselves with these energies. The gives birth to the order, the original order, as a result of the turning of the celestial bodies, the influence of which the ancients knew and applied. The is the Tur, T-Ur, which means door. T-O-R means door in German. The door or gate of life. Therefore, where there is a door or gate or a bridge and an emblem or a coat of arms, there probably stood in former times the rune itself. However, the letter or character V can also represent the rune. And finally, in our historical look at this rune, Siegfried Adolf Kummer, 1932 and 33, first gives a summary of his explanation of the rune and then gives runic postures, which are what interest us specifically. The rune, he says it means primordial, the fire, procreation, birth, spirit, knowledge, Light, State, Matter, Cause, Eternity, Time, Origin, Script, like Writing, Part, the Source, or Reason, the Mother, the Norn Urda, Uranus, or Uranus, arising, being, and passing away. That's related to Guido von Liszt's concept of a trinity of existence, arising, being, and passing away. The divine knowledge is a faith in God, All-Father, the World Spirit, from which all things have been made, who created all things, and in his Son, who carries the light of the lands, and through whom All-Father reveals himself to humanity. It is not a sun worship religion, but a sunny faith in God, in All-Father, the World Spirit, from whom everything comes and to whom everything returns. The Ur is the rune of the true healer and doctor. It contains the spiritual knowledge of all cosmic and earthly phenomenon. Remember that when we want to be a doctor, we need to know the cause. We need to diagnose the cause of an illness in order to correct it. The origin of phenomenon is the Ur of the universe, the Ur of the earth. Ur is the rune of the astral radiation of the Ur light of magnetism. It contains the knowledge of the beneficial use of high odic or audic astral radiation from the Ur, from that source. In the Ur rune position, which are these exercises, the cosmic rune stream can be picked up particularly well, which greatly strengthens the magnetic force in the practitioner. This is because in this position the nerve center of the head is strongly excited and the calm conscious practitioner can also receive information through clairaudience. The demonic or inverted form of the Ur rune is the overturned U rune, dwindling Ur knowledge, Ur delusion, impure procreation, blood burden. Motto: know the Ur in thee, know thyself, then thou wilt know all. So here's his explanation of the rune, the full body rune exercise. The practitioner takes up the Ich rune position, followed by 7 deep breaths through the nose. We already know this is he's been giving this exercise, right? You just stand and breathe deep, and then you move into the rune position. Bend the torso forward so that the fingertips almost touch the ground while making this rune. The U sound is to be sung or vocalized in the chest tone. Ooh. In this U rune position, rhythmic breathing follows 3 times. Mentally, one visualizes that the Earth's current, the Earth's magnetism, penetrates through one's feet, legs, and even through the whole body, strengthening one's life force and magnetism. The consumed stream or current then springs out through the fingertips into the earth. The student then again takes up the Ich rune position and repeats the whole exercise at least 3 times. They pay attention to their sympathetic nervous system and to their solar plexus. If your development is sufficiently advanced, dear brethren, then you will grasp the law of rhythm, the vibration of our earth. You will then become a blessing bringer, or a blessing bringing, healing, healer, a savior. And then he gives a little poem of his own. Ur, the knowledge of immortality. Do you recognize it? Ur forces, already enough have you felt. How alive and hot it flows through the body. Now bend the torso so that the earth cools it. Divinity and earth are reconciled in you. We could maybe even say heaven and earth are reconciled. After this exercise, the student lays down, stretched out on their back, with their back on the ground, head to the north. do deep breathing. We can feel as if the body is getting lighter and lighter until we don't feel the body anymore. If one falls asleep during the practice, then one should not continue on the same day. One should also do this exercise unobserved and alone. If you can't do it outside because it's cold or whatever, then you can do it inside with the window open. And he gives a hand rune exercise. Same thing, military at attention position. Then you raise up the arm. The left arm is bent below shoulder level so that the hand position comes to rest about 8 inches in front of our eyes, or 20 centimeters. You can do it also with the thumb down to make a U, or the way that he's showing here. The rune practitioner sings ooh in different tones and volumes for 3 minutes. Remember he talked before about how we can do ooh, the siren style, or you can go ooh, or ooh, and play with how the sound affects the exercise and the feeling in the body. You can also use oor or oor. He always recommends to practice each rune grip exercise for 3 minutes, and then pause, and then do that 3 times. So 9 minutes total. He gave a exercise for transmutation after or in the same chapter, and talked about how we need to manage the sexual energy properly because we can be depleted by connecting with other people, that especially who aren't on spiritual path. He says that one should say to oneself daily, I want to consciously serve humanity. I want to become a wise magician and thus find the great inner peace and harmony within myself. I will unerringly go along the path to All-Father. And then he says, for this transmutation exercise, the student concentrates with full willpower on the transformation of their procreative force. One vividly imagines the sexual fluid transformed into a gas-like ethereal substance that collects in the abdomen, and then how the transformed procreative force rises up the spinal cord, unites in the brain and the pineal gland, and there increases the spiritual and occult forces. With this vivid imagination, one performs their breathing exercises. While inhaling, one holds the mental picture of pulling up the procreative energy, the procreative force. If the student has often performed this practice, then they will really feel the rising of this transformed force, and they will be able to master their sexual force at all times. All right, that was the historical. So now we can see Huiracocha. If you remember, he's German, but he wrote in Spanish, and he's the one that brought these runic exercises to the Americas. He says this was in a class that he would give, like a correspondence course. We already know the Th-Rune, right? The first rune, the rune of fire, the animating and fecundating fire, whose vital energy and activity we have tried to inundate ourselves with by doing our practices in order to benefit our daily life. We need that fire of enthusiasm for everything. That is to say, we need fire and vivacity for all things. But behold, the fire is light. It is a mistake to believe that light is a product of the fire, as some people think. No. The fire, what it does in this case is to release the light, because the light is universal. It is the gateway of cosmic life, in the soul of the Logos, animating in all the areas of the infinite and even vibrating in the tiniest ion. The light not only strikes our retina, not only penetrates into our eyes, but our eyes themselves are of light. They are the light itself. This primordial, pure, and eternal light is referred to and taught to us by the Rune through its numerical value 2 and its correspondence with the letter U and V of our alphabet. Is a letter of the original alphabet whose meaning is primitive, primordial, original, and is still used in that sense as a prefix in modern German. In German, Ewigkeit is the eternal eternity. Origin, order, Uranus start from the same etymological root and are reminiscent of the ancient Ur. The Rune represents the science, and its zodiacal sign is Virgo, signifying an order that is peaceful and harmonious, that is, therefore, the creator of interior light. The square and compass of the Masons is the same symbol of light that results from the superimposition of the V upon the U. Equal to this Masonic symbol is the Olin sign of the ancient Mexicans, and they are both clear evidence of the Nordic origin of the symbol. I don't know about that. Freemasonry was aware that there was a great secret in this language, in this sign, but lost the key, and today it is no more than a symbol of moral significance for them. In it, hands are touched, greetings are made, steps are verified, and everyone is unaware of the reasons for these movements, ignoring that they are also reminiscent of runic movements. In those temples, the ancient sentence, "Man, know yourself," appeared. The Rune appeared as well, as if to say to man, recognize the pair as the origin of light, as angel, as God, as the entity of divine origin. If the Th-Rune always carries the mandate to engender your happiness in the present, then the Rune now carries another mandate of know yourself and even recognize yourself. In the Nordic Kabbalah, the significance of this rune is immortality, eternity, cause, principle, as well as primordial light. The Japanese present themselves before their sovereign, first upright and then inclined or bowing. This same thing happens in many churches, just as it is also prescribed in some initiatic rituals. This movement is also reminiscent of that primitive runic practice. And then he gives his practice here. He says, the student should face the north or the sun, and having raised their arms as in the exercise for the Th-Rune, crouch with legs open, and in this position firmly concentrate on the cosmic current, thereby penetrating within, while repeating the following prayer. Within me resides the light, the divine light. The great omniscient being will give me divine wisdom and will turn myself into a superman or superwoman through my upright behavior, through my equable way of being, and through my awakened and wise answers when others interrogate me. I acknowledge the superior entity, that divine light in myself, who is beginning to irradiate and who will unfailingly help all those who approach me. So be it. So that's a nice little prayer there. And then, of course, we have Samael and Weor. He gets a little deeper with it. He says, certainly the moon is the satellite of the earth in only one sense. By searching within the Akashic records of nature, one can verify that the moon is the mother of the earth. In the previous cosmic day, or Mahamvantara, the moon was inhabited, but now it is just a cold shadow that is dragged by the new body, the earth, to whom all of its powers and principles of life have been passed by transfusion. The transference of all the vital powers of the moon to the earth left that old selenite abode without life. Therefore, the lunar soul is now reincarnated in this world upon which we live. The moon looks like a satellite, but it is a mother who rotates around her daughter, the earth. So what he's saying is that in the previous cosmic day, the moon was like an Earth. But after the cosmic night, and now we have a new cosmic day, all of that life and whatever occurred there, that knowledge, those experiences transferred to our Earth. And the moon, as a dead planet, as a satellite, is a reminder of that. The one we now call Samael and Weor lived then, at that time, in the previous cosmic day, among that lunar humanity, and they were called the Selenites. And he knew its 7 root races, its epochs of civilization and barbarism, its alternating cycles of evolution and involution. When the Selenites arrived at the 6th sub-race of the 4th round, the same age that this terrestrial humanity has now reached, then he accomplished a similar mission by teaching the synthesis religion, which is contained within the initiatic stone, sex, the doctrine of Janus, Jano, Iao, or the doctrine of the jinns. He lit the flame of Gnosis among the Selenites and formed a Gnostic movement there as well. On the ancient moon, in those times before it became a corpse, those who accepted the synthesis religion of Jano were saved, and they transformed themselves into angels. Nevertheless, the great majority, those who were enemies of the Mithuna, those who rejected the initiatic stone, converted themselves into Lucifers, terribly perverted demons which the Bible refers to. As usual, a third party is never missing. So in that lunar apocalypse, a certain cold group at last became fiery, and they accepted the work in the ninth sphere. A new abode was granted to these people in order for them to work with the brute stone until giving it the perfect chiseled form. At the end of that lunar day, the lunar Mahamvantara, the self-realized monads were absorbed within the Absolute. After the great cosmic day, the monadic waves of the moon submerged themselves within the runic Ur. So he's saying that runic Ur is the Absolute. The Ayin Sof Aur in Hebraic Kabbalah. And he says also that they submerged themselves within the runic Ur, within the profound womb of eternal mother space. During such a Mahasamadhi, ecstasy without end, the monadic waves penetrated very deeply and arrived at the Father Brahma, the universal spirit of life. Brahma submerges himself into the Absolute during the whole period of the Mahapralaya, the great cosmic night. While in that tremendous paranirvanic repose or rest during the night, the unknown darkness converted itself into uncreated light. Many latent faculties exist within the Devimatra, cosmic space, inside the runic Ur, and within the microcosmic human machine, or better if we say intellectual animal, within the Ur that exists within us. And there are, as he says, many latent faculties which could be developed through tremendous, intimate super efforts. Certainly the cosmic night endures as long as the great day. Samael and Weor affirms that each one of the self-realized brethren were radically absorbed within their own primordial atom, the Ein Sof. Therefore, when the dawn of the new cosmic day is initiated, then eternal mother space expands herself from the inside towards the outside like a lotus bud. Thus, this is how the universe is gestated within the womb of the Prakriti, the cosmic mother, the primordial substance. So this is the practice that he gives us, a graphic from an older Gnostic document. I've seen the arms done differently than this and crouched down way further, almost like a kung fu horse stance, where the legs are wide and the hips are closer to the knees, closer to the level of the knees. So this is the practice, he says. Loving our Divine Mother and thinking of that great womb where the worlds are gestated, let us pray as follows. Within my real inner being resides the divine light. Ramio is the mother of my being Devi Kundalini. Ramio, which you can mantralize like this. Ramio, help me. Ramio, rescue me. Ramio, illuminate me. Ramio is my divine mother. O Isis, mother of mine, thou who hast the child Horus, my true being in thine arms, I need to die in myself, so that my essence may be lost or may lose itself in him, which refers to the child that is in the mother's arms. This prayer must be performed before the sun with the arms raised. The legs must be opened and the body crouched down, thus awaiting to receive light and more light. All right, well, that was a long review, but now, if there aren't too many, or let's see if there are any questions, then we'll just jump into today's material. We appreciate your patience with this. Let's see if there's any comments. Doesn't look like it. Well, good. Then we can get into it. So today we're looking at the Dorn Rune. Thorn, it's sometimes called, because it's got that pointed shape. And sometimes Torn, which is just an abbreviation of the TH. All right, let's look at what Fischbach says. The TH rune, the Thors rune, according to Friedrich Fischbach in 1900. He says this rune belongs to the thunder god Thor. It shows his sharp hammer, the thunderbolt. In the north, the rounder form also occurs. In the south, the rune of the battle god Tyr, the spear and sword god, probably replaced the older form because we find there the abbreviation without a stem or handle. It's just a triangle. And the pyramid form, equilateral triangle, pointed either to the right or up. In the Nordic war legends, the victory stone is often mentioned. It is also possible that such heavy, sharp thunderbolts were used to smash the shield of opponents, and this weapon was pulled back by straps, so something like a slingshot. Thor brings spring with the first thunderstorm, because he chases away the winter demons when he comes out of the mountains and blesses the fields with his hammer. He scatters the lightning blessing seed. His heavenly thunderbolt had therefore originally no evil meaning, but similar to the Lightbringer Lucifer, who became a devil at some point, the Thor rune also became the Thurson rune, although Thor's task is to defeat the Thurson, the storm and cold giants. The lightning purifies the air. The often simply numbing lightning is the sleep thorn. It brings that eternal sleep, which we call death. Therefore, we can conclude that this rune means death. In the past, graves were planted with wild thorns because they kept predators away and provide protection for songbirds. The hawthorn sprouts new shoots after a long frost and is therefore a symbol of reawakening. Brunhilde received Odin's sleep thorn and slept like a sleeping beauty on the rock bed surrounded by thorns and the Waberlohe, which is an impenetrable firewall in German mythology that surrounds the castle where the Valkyrie, fallen into a magical sleep, lies until Siegfried is able to penetrate it and awaken her. It is also a fire rune. Note the words puis, pure is fire, and pure means pure. Odin's blessed Baldur's funeral pyre with Thor's hammer. Baldur is one of the Aesir gods, son of Odin and Frigg. All right, now we're doing Guido von List. The Thor, Thors, Thorn, Dorn Rune, according to Guido von List, 1907. Thunder, thunderbolt, flash or lightning, Thor, thorn. There's a third I know that suits me too well. As a fetter for my enemies, I dull the swords of my opponents. Neither weapon nor defense helps them. That was his little poem that he says comes from the Edda. This rune is the thorn of death, which is what Wotan used to put the disobedient Valkyrie Brunhilde, a female warrior, into a deep sleep, similar to Sleeping Beauty. But in contrast to this, it is also the thorn of life, the phallus, with which death is conquered through rebirth. This threatening sign surely dulls the opposing weapon of the one struck to death, as well as the might of the powers of death, through a constant renewal of life in rebirth. Therefore, he gives this little motto, preserve yourself. So he's saying that the Dorn Rune is both the thorn of life and the thorn of death, depending on which way it's pointed. Ernst Tristan Kurtzahn, 1924, he says, exoterically, it means will and action. Esoterically, the phallus, the seed, Donar, which is another divinity. Generally, it means thunder, lightning, thorn, death, and life as opposite poles. Manifold and to some extent exceedingly opposite are the meanings of this profound rune. On one hand, the peculiar form of the rune symbolizes a thorn, which resembles an ichthyphallus, that is, a depiction of an erect phallus, the thorn of life, which expresses the expression of the will to life through procreation readiness. On the other hand, however, there is also the implied condition of death, necessary to define life, together with rebirth in an almost infinite change. No life without death, but also no death without life. Nothing and no one is able to resist this iron law, because in a futile battle, one's sword is dulled. Happy is the one who has recognized their real self within, as Jesus Christ the Son, because they will respect their physical life correspondingly less, and like our noble ancestors will absolutely and gladly give away this ephemeral, allegorical life for honor, liberty, and their fellow human beings. So again, he, unlike some of the other Volkish authors, emphasizes a sort of Christian perspective, which is interesting because, as we mentioned in the introductory part of this Runology series, that Volkish religion or whatever movement was very popular, and their perspective was not to like Christianity. They preferred their sort of a pagan revival, we might say, or a reemergence of the original, what they called the original Nordic religion, which then led to study of the runes. The Thors, Dorn Rune, according to R.J. Gorsleben, 1930. The letters TH and D, and then number 3. Thorn, Thor's hammer, as a thorn of procreation and a thorn of death. Self-assertion in the realm of force, the vault of heaven. The Asa Thor, the architect of the worlds rotating upon its axis. The world of drives, that is, of instincts and of urges. Dr. Friedrich Telcher's Ur word is Ziel, meaning aim or goal, as well as destination, objective. And he's got his poem, a third one I grasp if danger threatens, to bind the enemies with magic. So I dull the steel of the angry opponent, and like a stick his sword cannot cut any more. Thorn equals will and action. You can see he just copied that from the previous author. Donar, thunder. The Don R. R is eagle. The tone R. Tone is, or ton is tone or sound. So the sound eagle. Both Donar and Tonar, the sounding sun, that which sounds in the divine will. Sound is the dance of atoms, of the smallest particles from which the universe is built. Thorn is the thorn of life, the wick of life, the phallus, the symbol of the will to life by means of procreation readiness. But it also means death caused by life, the thorn of death, but which leads then to rebirth. No life without death, no death without life. Eternal death has been praised by the Catholic Church, but it was forgotten that without eternal life, there is no eternal death, because each is the opposing pole of the other, and neither is conceivable without the other. No sleep without awakening, no death without birth, no end without beginning. With the thorn of death, Wotan put the Valkyrie Brunhilde, a female warrior, into the death sleep, and surrounded her with Waberlohe, that only the person could cross who is unafraid of death, and who therefore is worthy to awaken her with the thorn of life. The Th-Rune is the rune of the thorn, or of the dowsing rod, and hence of body magnetic transmission, or odd magnetic transfer. The male magical thorn, the thorn of awakening, overcomes the thorn hedge of the selection castle, which is the name of the castle where the Brunhilde was. The rampart castle, the bride section selection place. The thunder hedge, the Thun-R hedge. Tun is a fence, R is the sun, therefore the sun or fire fence. He's just breaking down the symbolism of the mythology, saying that the hedge around the castle where Sleeping Beauty is a fire fence. It is meaning that we need to be able to handle the fire to pierce through it. This is also the significance of the fairy tale of Sleeping Beauty, who sleeps the hibernation of infertility until the prince, the knight, the fearless one, arrives, penetrates the thorn rose hedge, and awakens the virgin with kisses, who is sleeping the sleep between death and rebirth, and whose destiny is to give birth to the son of the hero, before she falls again into the long sleep of death. Part of the Thorn Rune is also the office or department of the dragon, who has the rotating power to draw the procreation power in the ancient electoral regulations, for which reason he had also the virgins in his custody. The dragon used to keep the virgins, which, dying only, he left to the fearless man, who is not afraid of the Thor threat rotation law. The Thor law. That is the law of becoming and of passing away. Therefore we find the dragon in the place of the Thorn Rune in coats of arms. Other representations of the Thorn Rune are a tip, a spear, and the scorpion. On the flyer there's a unicorn because of the pointy horn it has. The scorpion, astrologically speaking, is the awakening thorn, the stinger of life, as well as the singer of death. The rules over the sphere of sex in the zodiac. If the Fa rune represents the father, the begetter, the generator or producer, and Ur is the Ur mother, the Ur womb, then Dorn or Thorn is the third, Thor, the son of Wotan. Thor and Tyr are both sons of Wotan. They are the sons of the thorn hedge. Through the narrow door of childbirth we enter life, and through the large door or gate of death we leave it again. This rune teaches that the human being is subject to the law of eternal rebirth. During one's earthly life, through useful combat, one's sword gets dulled. Whosoever is capable of preserving their true self recognizes that everything temporal is merely a parable. The Thorn Rune is consecrated to Thor, the turner, one who turns something, as well as the group of three of the Trinity of becoming, ruling or being, and changing or rotating to a new arising. The double thorn approaches the shape of the or marriage rune. Only marriage creates the human being in its entirety through man and woman, who beget the third one, who is more than them both. According to the runic sequence, from Fa the father, the one, and the mother, the two, originates Thor, the Tho, or Tro, the three, the third one, the child. This child becomes the connection between two human beings. The Thorn Rune awakens the thoughts and feelings of the youth of humanity and of the individual human, of their paradise, and of the dancing time in life. The demonic side of the Thorn Rune is deception, while on the theonic side it is the three, the Troy, the loyal, like the ancient faith which was a knowledge entrusted to the Druids. The word Ziel, meaning goal or aim, also refers to destruction. Furthermore, it refers to dying, perishing, starving, drought, concealing, the helmet of concealment, or Tarnhelm, a magic helmet that Richard Wagner talked about in his Ring Cycle opera. All right, now we're in Kummer, the last of our historical. The D or Th rune, Thor, Thurs, Thorn. Thorn is will and action. Thunder. Donar, the thunderer. Don-ar, the singing sun, the thundering sun. Thor's hammer, the door or gate. This rune is dedicated to Thor, whose hammer strikes in the triad, becoming, prevailing, being, and passing away to new arising. Thor, the third, the three, loyalty, those such as the Druids who were entrusted with high faith, knowledge, and magic. With the three, spirit, body, and soul, I blunt the steel of the angry opponent. With Thor's hammer, I meet all threatening dangers. Through the thorn, the mutual spiritual and physical repolarization of man and woman takes place in marriage. It is the rune of the divining rod, the magnetic physical odd transmission. The thorn of fate, the thorn of life, the phallus, the symbol of life, of procreation. This reminds us of Sleeping Beauty, who is awakened by the thorn of life. The thorn of death, which Wotan put Brunhilde into the sleep of death. However, it is also the thorn of death which leads to rebirth. No life without death, no death without life. The thorn of life and the thorn of death are the bind rune of the Dag rune, the double thorn, the dual type, the winter solstice symbol, the rune of Mother Earth. The demonic of the Thorn Rune is black magic, spiritual and physical destruction, spiritual and physical death, animal procreation. He gives this motto: realize your physical and spiritual self. And then he gives a very simple exercise, starting from the Ich rune position. The practitioner places the left hand on the left hip, creating an angled arm. This is the Dorn Rune position. The Dorn Thor Rune position has the following sound formulas. Tate Tito Tu, right? ta, te, ti, to, tu, and da de di do do. He also gives a hand rune grip, which, again, with these postures, what we want to do is imitate the shape of the rune. So if you find a better position, if you want to use your pointer finger and your thumb, as opposed to here he uses the ring finger and the thumb, that's up to you. The important thing is to imitate the shape of the rune, do the mantra, concentrate on what you're doing, and do the practices where you're bringing in the concentration of bringing in the energy from the cosmos and activating the symbol or the associations which belong to that symbol which we call the rune. So his description of how to do the rune grip or mudra, he says, the rune practitioner should take up the Th-Rune position, which is military at attention. This is followed by deep breathing exercise with thoughts directed towards physical and spiritual purification, which also need to be observed with any of the rune grips. Practitioner then stretches the left arm upwards and, taking the hand position of figure 3, sings da 3 times for 3 minutes each. You don't have to elongate it to 3 times. You can take a breath, but do it for a solid 3 minutes, during which higher tones are to be held longer. At the deepest tone, they are focused in the feet. Right, so this is again working with the tone. So it's like da or da if we want to work with the lower tone with the feet. Remember that each rune grip should be repeated for 3 minutes each, followed by a pause, and 3 times, 3 sets. The cosmic subtle forces begin to accumulate in the hand, which is experienced as a tingling in the outstretched fingertips, as well as in the ring finger and the tip of the thumb. During the pause, thoughts are directed to the absorption of solar forces. After finishing the exercise, the collected subtle forces are to be directed throughout the entire body by conscious willpower. So circulate the energy that just got accumulated in your hand. And he says the astral color vibration is bright yellow. So you may see that color. Higher astral laws can also be triggered through this rune grip. This depends entirely on how much cosmic force current the rune practitioner is able to take in and feed into the body. The deeper the inner immersion, the stronger the accumulation of forces will be. This rune grip also has the following sound formulas: de, di, do, do, right? Da, de, di, do, do. You could probably do ta, te, ti, to, tu, which you mentioned above. All right, so now the meat of the course, we're trying to study the Gnostic and Rosicrucian here. The point of reading those historical things is to see how Huiracocha was influenced. So let's see here. He says, beloved disciple. Remember, this is a correspondence course that you might receive in the mail, or you might be given when you are on site taking classes at a school, that you'd only be able to read while you were there in the room with the instructor. The third rune that we're going to study is Thor, also called Thorn or Dorn, whose variations we must refer to for greater comprehension. In the dolmens of the megalithic period, prehistoric monuments of unhewn stone, from Valencia, Spain, we have had good opportunity to compare these same runes with those found in the dolmens of Alvao in Portugal, to which science applies the age of about 10,000 years. So he's saying this rune appeared, according to science, 10,000 years ago. In Spain, as in Portugal, the Nordic Druids taught the manipulation or management of these magical figures. But those who would eventually study theosophy did not realize that we had all these things closed by and transgressed by looking for things still more recent and of considerably less value in India. So he's saying that the theosophists are studying things in India which are from, let's say, 5,000 years ago, but that these things, these Nordic things from Spain and Portugal that the Druids taught 10,000 years ago are more ancient. Now, as we study this typical of Volkish concept, that the Nordic one is better, but from a Gnostic perspective, we know that they're all studying the same thing, and it has value to study any religious system, because all religious systems teach eternal values. And that's what we want, is to access those eternal values. On the other hand, we can see the surprise of the Catholic priests when they arrived in Brazil and found in said country the same paleoepigraphic inscriptions on stones as those existing in Europe. Dorn, which means thorn in modern German, has the significance of willpower in the Nordic language. Consequently, Donar was the god of willpower. He was the god of the thorn. Thousands of years before being known to our Judeo-Roman Christianity, a god on the cross was known in the mysteries, and the most beautiful crucifix we know is the one found on the rocks of the Columbia River Valley, whose age is not possible to specify, but that is the work of many thousands of years before our modern era. We can equally say that there was found in Sardinal, coming from the Bronze Age, many heads with crowns of thorns carved in the rocks. It is necessary to bear in mind in those same centuries, we already know historically that there existed a cult to the god of thorns, who, well considered and examined, gives us the figure of the Thorn Rune. So what he's saying is that before the Judeo-Roman Christianity that we know, Christianity, or what we now call Christianity, already existed, this worship of the cross and crown of thorns, but we didn't call it Christianity. In the mysteries of the cult of Thorn, practices were given to develop the willpower. Ecce homo, which is a Latin phrase that means like there is the man, something like that. Here is the man. Therefore, as a sacred page from our Roman Christianity is nothing more than a synchronism of the Norse mysteries and a reminiscence of the cult of that epic, the cult to the thorn. We now see why the Rose Cross, the Rosicrucian fraternity, chose the symbol of the rose that has not only leaves and petals but also thorns. Dorn, or thorn, signifies willpower, and the figure of the Ecce homo does not have a crown just to remind us of a historical fact, but to tell us, man, gird your head with the crown of sacrifice, and arm yourself with a precise willpower in order to achieve triumph. Dorn is the phallus, the volitional principle of magic that offers us a new key. It tells us that we must accumulate in the phallus the seminal impulses in order to acquire that deep spiritual energy which is called willpower. When the master gave me these practices, I fell in love with a very cute and provocative woman. I was young and impotent, and after exciting myself by caressing her, at a certain moment I imposed my willpower, and passed on to necking. At that time I spent almost a year absent from all carnal contact, and there I acquired that willpower which made me triumph in life. I did not want to say, do the same thing, disciple, because each one must settle this for themselves. In some menhirs in Spain, we find figures that are armed with a hammer. It is the German god Dorna, who represents the thorn of Nordic mythology, with his mace in hand, which he throws from a distance in order to produce the ray, or the spark. Without the thorn that punctures, that hurts, there is no spark, there is no burst of light that emerges. And this is the basis of the great esoteric teaching of this rune. Arm yourself with the willpower of iron, and triumph will be yours. It is also the symbol of reincarnation. If Fa has been the father and Ur the mother, then Thorn is the child, and consequently represents the Trinity, and is the emblem of the cosmic Christ, of cosmic willpower. In many Spanish shields, we find the Thorn Rune in the way we have described it. And it is clear proof that the nobles of Spain inherited their heraldry from the Nordic peoples. This is the practice, he says, as a practice for this rune, during 15 days, you must place an arm on the waist or hip, inscribing the shape of this rune. This exercise should be done in the morning, saying ta, te, ti, to, tu, right? Mantralizing. That's the end of what he says. Finally, let's see what Samael and Weor says about 20 years later. One day, Samael and Weor and Litelantes, who was his wife, visited the temple of Chapultepec in Mexico. There, people also visited who still had their lunar bodies. Truly, how different are the solar bodies. What was astonishing was the way in which this lunar group advanced, without veneration, without respect. However, Samael and Weor could clearly comprehend that such a group should be seen with sympathy, since they were selected people with a lot of merits. Unfortunately, it was not an hour for a meeting. The superior master of the temple was severely grumbling at them, and he even took them out of the temple by singing in a very delectable language. Thus, all of these people had to withdraw. Samael and Weor remained reflecting upon all of this. The love of Christ is formidable because this lunar group is very sincere, even though these poor little ones have yet to achieve the second birth, which means the creation of the solar bodies. But they deserve to be helped, so the Lord takes care and cultivates them as if they were delicate little flowers from the greenhouse. Good opportunities will be finally granted unto them in order to work in the ninth sphere, and disgrace will be upon them if they would fail in the difficult ordeal. The descent into the Averno, Tartarus, the ninth sphere, was, in ancient times, the maximum ordeal for the supreme dignity of the Hierophant. Buddha, Jesus, Dante, Hermes, Krishna, Quetzalcoatl, etc. had to descend into the abode of Pluto. Here we find the cave where Cerberus howls, with its barking, its three enormous flat-nosed heads, and with serpents writhing on its neck. Cerberus fills all the defunct ones with terror. He's the one who guards the gate of hell. The underworld, I should say. Those who died, cheated by the poison of sexual passion, dwell in those painful profundities. Here are the three furies: desire, mind, and ill will. Those are also called the three traitors, who flog the guilty with whips and which hiss like viperous tongues. To descend into those mineral regions of the earth, into that sub-world, becomes extremely easy. But to ascend again, to return up to the light of the sun, is frightfully difficult, almost impossible. When Samael and Weor was born in the causal world, or better if we say the parallel universe of conscious willpower, then the sackcloth of Veronica shone upon the altar of the temple. Many heads, crowned with thorns, that were chiseled in stone, are found related to the Bronze Age. A cult to the god of thorns existed. Such thorns present to us the symbolic figure of the Dorn Rune. In the sacred mysteries of the Thorn cult, special practices were given in order to develop conscious willpower. Dorn, thorn, signifies willpower. Remember, Gnostic brethren, that our motto is telema. The divine rostrum crowned with thorns signifies telema, that is to say, conscious willpower. We know that there are certain groups that use that term, but they're not referring to conscious willpower. They're referring to desire, concentrated desire, which is different from conscious willpower. Dorn is also the phallus, the volitional principle of sexual magic, the Mithuna. There is the need, by means of the phallus, to intelligently accumulate the seminal energy. And when it is refrained and transmuted, then it is converted into dilemma, conscious willpower. Arm yourself with a steel-like willpower. Remember, beloved reader, that without the thorn which pierces or pricks, the spark does not jump, and the light does not emerge. We can return from Tartarus, from the underworld, and up to the light of the sun only with telema, Christ will. Samael and Weor tells us that truly only the Christ will knows how to obey the Father, on earth as it is in heaven. Take heed of ill will. It is in itself the strength or force of Satan, that is to say, concentrated desire. Practice. In the military position, with our feet firm and facing towards the east, we place our right arm in such a way that our hand will remain resting upon our waist or hip, thus taking the form of this rune. Now you must sing the mantric syllables. Ta, te, ti, to, tu, with the purpose of developing the Christ will in yourself. This exercise must be practiced every day at sunrise. Then in another book called Igneous Rose, which is actually in 1954, so it was maybe the first time he wrote about this rune, he says, "Sexual magic is the path. We must self-realize the Christ within ourselves in order to speak the creative verb. However, this is possible only by learning how to control the feminine principle of the sun. We know that, remember, it's like yin and yang, right? The feminine principle, the yin principle. We know that sexual magic is very hard and difficult for humans with a weak willpower, and therefore we recommend our disciples to first practice the exercises of the Thorros rune in order to acquire the force of willpower which will permit them to heroically control sexual magic. Our disciples must perform this exercise by placing their hand upon their waist or hip and then vocalizing the syllables ti, te, to, tu, ta, prolonging the sound of each vowel. See, he gives it there in the chakra order, not the alphabetical order. They must then vocalize the mantra Thorn as follows. Thorn. Our disciples who practice this exercise daily will acquire a powerful force of will with which they will practice sexual magic, dominating their passionate beast. The force of willpower is symbolized by the crown of thorns of the Nazarene Christ. It is necessary to strike the hard flint in order to make the spark of immortality jump. The force of willpower is a tremendous force of sacrifice. It is the crown of thorns of the Master. The willpower and movement of the Kundalini are intimately united. The force of willpower is the Dorn Rune, and the force of movement or motion is symbolized by the Olin sign of the Aztec Mexicans. And that, the Olin sign, the Os or Othil, Odal, Adel rune, we'll be studying in our next class. But that brings us to the end of what we are going to look at today. The Dorn Rune. So that's all the material we wanted to present to you. If you have any questions or comments, now is the time. Oh, we got another question. We got a question right here. Kundalini, awakening and true union with divinity. To unite, because he's talking about sexual magic, right? Which is white tantra. To connect with man and woman, to connect sexually, withdraw before the spasm, to strike with the hard flint, that is to keep that energy and transmute it, to send it up the spine, right? With the Kundalini, send that fire up the spine in order to help us awaken the faculties that we've lost that when we came out of Eden through wasting the sexual energy by becoming a victim of that pleasurable impulse. But by learning to dominate that impulse, right? He says we know that sexual magic is difficult for those who don't have a strong willpower. We recommend practicing this rune. So through the practice of this rune, we can develop our willpower, which allows us to control ourselves when we're in the sexual act, withdraw before we have an orgasm, and thereby retain that power, that strength, that seed of divinity, and then use that to develop our connection with divinity more and more. Well, if you have any more questions or comments, please feel free to leave them. If we don't get to answer them this evening, then we would be happy if you wanted to email us, gnosticstudies@gmail.com, or you can leave them in the comments area, and we can come back and answer them next time we're online. Yeah, so with that, doesn't look like there's any more questions or comments, so we were going to sign off, but we want to say thank you for your attention, for sharing time with us and listening. Hopefully it was helpful, and we want to wish you the best in your esoteric work.